The night Emma Carter asked the question, she didn't know it would change the rhythm of her life. She only knew that something inside her was tired of waiting, tired of pretending that quiet feelings didn't matter. The rain had just started, tapping hard against the cafe windows. When she looked up from her untouched cup and spoke the words that had been sitting in her chest for weeks, "Are you off soon?" The moment she said it, the air shifted like a held breath finally released. Haven Street Cafe was busy, loud with laughter and the hiss of steaming milk. It was the kind of place people came to feel safe after long days. Emma had been coming here almost every evening since winter. She told herself it was for the tea, for the warm light, for the view of the street. But deep down, she knew she came for Daniel Brooks. He worked behind the counter with calm focus, dark hair always slightly messy, sleeves rolled up, moving like he belonged exactly where he was. He never tried to stand out. He didn't have to. Daniel heard her question and stopped mid-motion. His hand froze on the counter. For a second, the noise around them faded, as if the cafe had leaned in to listen. He didn't answer right away. He glanced at the clock, then at the long line of orders, then at Emma. His eyes held something unreadable surprise. Maybe relief, maybe fear. Emma felt a flash of regret. She almost smiled and said she didn't mean anything by it, but Daniel didn't laugh it off. He slowly untied the apron from around his waist. The movement was simple, but it felt heavy, like a decision made long ago finally coming to the surface. He folded the apron neatly, placed it on the counter, and reached for his jacket. His coworker looked at him in confusion, but Daniel only nodded once, silent and firm. Then he stepped out from behind the counter and stood in front of Emma. "Let's go," he said quietly. Emma's heart skipped. She hadn't expected that. Not this. She stood up without thinking, leaving her tea behind, following him as if pulled by a current she didn't understand yet. The bell over the cafe door rang as they stepped outside into the rain-soaked street. The night felt wide and uncertain, full of movement and light. Cars passed, people hurried by, umbrellas opening and closing. No one noticed them, but Emma felt like everything had just changed. They walked side by side, not touching, not speaking. Daniel didn't rush. He didn't look back. Emma matched his pace, her thoughts racing. She wondered what had made him walk away from his shift without a word. She wondered if she had crossed a line. But there was something steady in his silence. Something that told her he meant this moment. Whatever it was, Emma had lived in Portland for 3 years. Long enough to know the streets, the shortcuts, the way the city breathed after dark. She had built a life that looked fine from the outside. A job in marketing. A small apartment with clean windows and quiet neighbors. Friends she saw on weekends. But somewhere along the way, she had stopped feeling excited. After a long relationship ended badly, she promised herself she would be careful. No risks, no strong hopes. Just calm days that didn't hurt. Daniel stopped near the river, under a tall maple tree whose leaves shimmered with rain. The city noise softened here, replaced by the steady sound of water moving forward without hesitation. He turned to face her, his expression serious but gentle. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt standing there with him in the open night. "I didn't mean to put you in an awkward spot," she said. "I was just asking." Daniel took a slow breath, like he'd been holding something in for a long time. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. "I just didn't want to ignore it." Emma searched his face. "Ignore what?" "The feeling that I keep walking past moments that matter," he said. "I've been doing that for years." The honesty surprised her. It felt rare, especially from someone she barely knew outside the cafe. Daniel leaned back against the railing, eyes on the dark water. He told her how he'd moved to Portland after leaving behind a life that no longer fit him. A relationship that looked perfect on paper but felt empty inside. He told her how he learned to stay busy instead of asking hard questions. How routine became a shield. Emma listened, her chest tightening with recognition. She told him about her own choices, about staying where it was safe even when it felt small, about evenings spent alone, scrolling through her phone, telling herself she was fine. about how coming to the cafe became the best part of her day. Even if she never said why, the rain picked up, soaking the street, blurring the lights. Daniel took off his jacket and held it out to her without thinking. She hesitated, then accepted it, the warmth surprising her. Their fingers brushed, brief but electric. Neither of them pulled away too fast. They talked for what felt like minutes and hours at the same time. Nothing dramatic. No promises. Just truth spoken plainly. The kind of truth that feels risky because it can't be taken back. Emma realized she wasn't nervous anymore. She felt present, awake, like she had stepped into her own life again. Eventually, Daniel glanced back toward the cafe. "I should return," he said. "They'll need me to close." Emma nodded, disappointment and understanding mixing together. "I get it." They walked back the same way they had come, but it felt different now. Lighter. At the cafe door, Daniel paused. The bell hung silent above them, waiting. "I'm glad you asked," he said, "even if I didn't know how to answer." Emma smiled softly. "I think you answered in your own way." He smiled back, small but real. As she walked away into the rain, Emma knew one thing for sure. That simple question had opened a door. And for the first time in a long while, she was ready to see where it might lead. The moment Daniel turned toward Emma under the maple tree, she knew the night was no longer just a random walk in the rain. It felt like the beginning of something she couldn't fully name yet. The air was cold, the city quiet. And the river's dark water moved like it had always been, there steady, patient, never asking anyone to hurry. Daniel looked at her with a seriousness that made her heart beat faster. "I don't know what happens next," he said, "but I know I didn't want tonight to end without being honest." Emma stared at him, surprised by how calm he sounded. "Honest about what?" she asked, and her voice shook a little even though she didn't want it to. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the answer. Daniel's eyes softened. "About how I feel when you're here," he said. "I've been watching you for months. I didn't know how to say anything. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would stay safe." Kama's chest tightened. She had never expected him to say that. She had expected a simple explanation. A joke, a shrug. Instead, he was giving her a piece of his heart like it was something simple. Like handing her a cup of tea. "I'm not sure I know how to handle this," she admitted. "I've been careful for a long time." Daniel nodded. "Me too." They stood there, rain falling around them. And Emma realized how rare it was to meet someone who spoke honestly without trying to impress her. Daniel wasn't trying to be charming. He was trying to be real. "I left because I couldn't stand pretending I didn't feel anything," he said. "And I didn't want to regret it." Emma swallowed. "Regret what?" Daniel looked at the river again. "Regret not trying. Regret letting life pass me by while I stayed safe." She thought about her own life. How she'd built walls so strong she didn't know how to let anyone in anymore. How she'd told herself she was fine. But inside she was tired of being alone. "I didn't know you felt that way," Emma said quietly. "I thought you were just someone who worked here." Daniel smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile that carried years of waiting. "I'm not just someone," he said, "and I don't want to be just someone to you." The words landed hard. Emma felt her eyes sting, but she didn't look away. She didn't want to hide. She wanted to feel what was happening. Daniel took a step closer, then stopped. He wasn't rushing. He was careful, like he was trying not to scare her away. "I know we barely know each other," he said, "but I want to know you. I want to learn the parts you don't show." Emma's mind raced. It was easy to picture how this could go wrong. How people could hurt each other. How she could get hurt again. But the way Daniel spoke made her feel like he was someone who would be careful with her. "I don't want to get hurt," she said, almost whispering. Daniel's eyes held hers. "Neither do I." They stood in silence for a moment. The rain fell heavier. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, making the night look softer, almost dreamlike. Emma realized she had been holding her breath. Daniel finally broke the silence. "Come with me," he said. Emma blinked. "Where?" Daniel hesitated, then smiled. Somewhere I can talk without the noise. Somewhere I can be honest without feeling like I'm making a mistake. Emma felt a pull in her chest. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect herself. But she also wanted to know what was on the other side of this moment. She nodded. Daniel led her through a few quiet streets. Away from the busy area of the cafe, they walked until they reached a small park with a wooden bench under a street lamp. The light was warm and soft, casting a glow that made the rain look like it was falling slower. They sat down, not touching, but close enough that Emma could feel the warmth of his presence. Daniel looked at her like he was trying to memorize every detail. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Talking about feelings. I usually keep them locked up." Emma nodded. "Me too." Daniel smiled. "Then maybe we can learn together." Emma felt something inside her loosen. It was a strange feeling, like the tightness in her chest was finally letting go. She realized she hadn't felt this calm in a long time. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything felt real. They talked for a long time, not about the future, not about promises, but about the small things that made them who they were. Daniel told her about his childhood, about how he grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. He told her about the moment he decided to leave, the moment he realized he wanted more from life. Emma listened, surprised by how much she wanted to hear him. Emma shared things too. She talked about her family, her job, and the way she used to dream about love but stopped believing in it after being hurt. She told him about her fear of being alone and her fear of trusting someone again. Daniel didn't interrupt. He listened like it mattered. And Emma realized that's what she had been missing, someone who listened. The rain slowed, turning into a gentle drizzle. The park grew quieter. The night felt like it was holding its breath along with them. "I don't want this to be a one-time thing," Daniel said suddenly. His voice was steady, but Emma could hear the fear underneath. Emma looked at him. "You don't." "No," he said. "I want to see you again. I want to keep talking. I want to know if this is real." Emma's heart pounded. She wanted to say yes, but she was still afraid. She didn't want to be disappointed. She didn't want to fall again and get hurt. But she also didn't want to ignore the feeling that something inside her had finally awakened. "I want that too," she said quietly. Daniel's face softened. He looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted. "Good," he said. They stayed there for a while longer, letting the night settle around them. When it was time to leave, Daniel stood up first. He offered his hand to help her up, and she took it without hesitation. Their hands touched, and it felt like a promise without words. They walked back toward the cafe, where the night would return to normal. Emma could already feel the routine waiting for her. The next day, the next week, the same life she had been living for so long. But now she knew there was a new path open. A path that started with a simple question and led to a moment of honesty. A path that might lead somewhere beautiful, or it might lead to pain. But for the first time in a long time, Emma felt ready to find out. As they reached the cafe, Daniel paused at the door. He looked at Emma one last time, his eyes full of meaning. "Tomorrow," he said. Emma nodded. "Tomorrow." And as she walked away, she felt the rain on her face and the warmth in her chest. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she had finally stopped hiding. She had finally said yes to something real.